Welcome to 8 Cubes. I'm KMBest, joined as always by Lambie Series. It sounds weird to say I'm joined by someone on their channel. Of course, welcome to Lambie Series channel. He is joined by me, KMBest, for this episode of 8 Cubes. We're going to start things off talking about Beast, a card that both of us absolutely love that got, I think we can reasonably describe it as nerfed from a 3-4 that gave things permanent discounts when it bounced them to a 2-2 that only does it for the next turn. So, Lambie, Beast lover, where you at?
Okay, so I just want to put it out there first that I really do think this is like a strict like nerf, but how much of a nerf is it is the question, right? So what Beast is right now, it's currently a 2-2, feels great, but the problem is when it returns cards to your hand, they only stay reduced in cost the next turn, the exact next turn. This means that you lose out a lot of potential combos with like using Beast to bounce stuff early and holding everything for like turn 6 to like play everything together with your werewolf, stuff like that, for like a surprise power spike and all that. But yeah, so you lose that, but you gain the fact that Beast is one cost cheaper, and we know what one cost difference does to so many cards, right? So I still think it's a nerf because of the inability to, like, you lose a lot of game-winning scenarios by not being able to hold these said zero-cost cards in your hand. But I guess on the upside, I've been able to do stuff like, I don't know, I have a Zabu on the board, right? And I play like a werewolf, and then I beast my other stuff on turn 5, like 3+2 on the same turn, and then we just spam it all on turn 6 anyway, since there's only 6 turns in the game. So like that's one upside. But other than that, a lot of the time when I've been playing with newbies, I feel like, oh man, like I wish I could just hold all these things for a long time and then reallocate them when I need to on the final turn when I have more perfect information. Right now, Beast is like, a lot of the time now I just use Beast to like bounce one thing, like because it's on curve, right? You play a one cost, you bounce a thing, you play back the thing, and then that's it. That's all you gotta do with the Beast. So I feel like overall it's enough. What do you think, KM?
It's definitely a nerf. I don't like how it feels in a lot of the decks that are normally Beast decks. I do think that there is a chance that it's a nerf in the decks that Beast is currently good in, but it could be a buff in other decks. Like, for example, Beast and Thanos is now like marginally interesting. Like, I don't think I'm gonna do it, but it's like, okay, that's like I am actually somewhat interested in doing that some of the time. Like Beast in, maybe you could go back to like an Elsa Loki thing, assuming they ever fix Elsa. Who the hell knows if they're ever gonna do that. But I think current Beast, it's clearly a downgrade in any deck that is currently playing him, but I am holding the door open to say maybe there's something that new Beast at 2 can go in that Beast at 3 could not. I don't know what that is, but it is possible. I can conceive of it. Next up is Hela, and I gotta say, this is like my least favorite deck in the entire game, but we cannot do anything other than talk about it because this deck is real, folks. This deck is real and it will get you. And I wanted to talk about why Hela is good right now. And a lot of it has to do with decreasing power thresholds throughout the game of Marvel Snap. For example, you have things like Collector Loki no longer working. That takes like 7 or so power out of the average Loki game. You have things like Blob being an actual normal-sized card instead of the biggest guy of all time. You have things like a proliferation of tech cards that are keeping decks like Hela Tribunal out of the meta, and even the Hulkbuster nerf to Destroy keeps that deck from getting exactly tall enough to compete with a Hela when the Hela has discarded enough cards. Which all adds up into we are in a metagame where Hela is not only a good deck, it is the most played deck after Infinite early in the season. And that is a horrifying state of affairs to me. Personally, I find that horrific. Lambie, you're a little bit more of a gambler than I am. What are your thoughts on Hela, its health for the game, and where it's at right now?
Well, firstly, I don't gamble. I take calculated risks. So let's get that out of the way first. But yeah, no, I agree though. I do see like an influx of Hela, like way more. And it's not the Modok Hela one, right? It's the one that
No.
just has like what, 3 discard cards, and then you just play Hela to revive 2 to 3 things. That is like the better Hela right now, because like I think we talked about this like a lot of times on different episodes, right? When you nerf everything, stuff that doesn't get nerfed eventually will have like more time to shine. And now it's like consistent Hela's time to shine. Consistent Hela, aka the one that only just like discards 2 or 3 things. But yeah, it's their time to shine because there's no deck that can really keep up with the actual like extra points you get, right, with the Hela right now. And also some of these Hela shells, they actually run like significant early game. Like it's not useless. Like Lady Sif is 3-5, Blade is 1-3,
Yep.
and then you just supplement it with like 2 or 3 revives with the Hela on turn 6. A lot of the time now, from my personal experience, it really doesn't matter where the stuff revive. As long as it respawns, you don't keep up. So that's what happens. Like right now when everything else is like slightly lower in power. Personally, it's still within my wheelhouse of like not too much. I can live with this, but maybe not that much longer, but I can live with this for now. I'm used to it. Like I don't mind losing 8 cubes once in a while when things don't go right. But if it's always gonna be okay, if they have Hela, let's gamble kind of situation, then this shouldn't last for too long. Currently, it's still fine.
It's definitely one of those decks where it feels like if this is a significant part of the metagame, we have the Galactus problem, where it's like, what is your counter to this? Well, I guess where you put it, and I play right. Cosmo. Like, what am I? Like, what are we doing here? Like, maybe I'll leech you, except all the leech decks except Thanos are really, really mid. Like, it's just a very odd situation that allows a deck like this to proliferate just because there's nothing going very tall that can live through Sarah, right? Like that's the metagame, that's the issue, right? Is that everything else that goes really tall gets crushed by Sarah. Hela is the only thing that goes tall that doesn't get crushed by Sarah. Like that's what it's doing right now. Let's talk about Corvus Glaive. Lambie, you're way more into this card than me, so here, this is your topic.
Yo, I am like not just way more over in this topic than you. I'm way more into this topic than everyone else, I think. But like, okay, so coming off from that previous topic, I suddenly have an idea. So let's tell you what my initial Corvus
Is it put Corvus Glaive in Hela? Because
no,
like that was my idea. I'm way ahead of you.
No, exactly. It's the opposite. It's put Hela in ramp. All right, so hear me out. Okay. So my initial Corvus Glaive pitch is that in a ramp deck, in a Sandman ramp deck, not being able to play Electro or Wave on turn 3 equals you lose most of the time, right? Because you can't you can't play a 5 cost on turn 4. So what Corvus Glaive is, it's your second wave, it's your second Electro that allows you to. We did the math about this previously. I think like 9 out of 10 times play either Wave, Electro, or Corvus 90%. By turn 3.
Yes.
It's a 3/5 by the way, and this lets you ramp out a 5 cost card on turn 4. Like 9 out of 10 times, which is super consistent. The downside is Corvus drops 2 cards from your hand, and if it drops the wrong cards, well, you die a lot of the time. But the thing is, with the idea that ramp cannot usually win without playing a 5 cost on 4, to me it's a worthy risk to take to play like a second Electro in my deck. And now I just want to talk about that Hela thing, which is like, so you have the Hela option in your deck just because, like, let's say you play Corvus on turn 3, right? You discard Doom, you discard Sandman, and then you're like, oh no, but you draw Hela, and then you just like bam. So it's likely gonna be one of those, like, most of the time I don't get to play this Hela card, but it's one of those like things whereby if you use Corvus to accidentally discard something a bit useful, you have a Hela in your deck to just like spam it all out in one turn. Having said that, it's not just that, by the way. It's like if you go Corvus into Sandman, we are all stuck with 1 card per turn, and then I play Hela. Kind of massive, right? So that's the pitch now, but I hope it works out. I really want this card to work out, but
I guess we'll see. The issue I feel like that deck might have is that, like, you're doing Sandman stuff, don't you just lose to people doing actual Hela stuff? Like, aren't you just always dead? Aren't you just like, if they discard 3 cards, you just cannot beat the card Hela?
Yeah, see, this is why
any circumstances.
This is why my threshold for the Hela stuff is fine now still. But if it's for too long, it's basically that.
Yeah, because it's like one of those where it's like, you know, you've constructed a deck that should do what it does. It's just like, where does it actually fit in the metagame when people are playing stuff like Hela? It's a very awkward spot.
Mm-hmm.
Supergiant came out, and I saw more clickbait about this card than I think I've seen about pretty much any card in the entire game. There was so much like, oh my gosh, she's busted. Look at this Aliyah thing we can do. And I gotta be 100% honest with you. I don't think this card is good. I think it is okay and can go in stuff and will scam people. And like, there's some upside to stuff like that. But using it offensively has not seemed like what it's actually good for. Using it defensively, like to force other things out of the metagame, that makes sense to me. But like using Supergiant offensively, all of that stuff has felt a bit like cope to me.
Yeah, so currently iterations of using Super Giant offensively, and I've tried it myself, is like you go and do stuff like you go super aggression with tempo and like big stated cards in the early game, then you play Super Giant into like what Absorbing Man, Doom slash Alive, that kind of stuff. In theory it's like kind of a lockout, but it never really works, right? Like it's too much, it's too niche. And personally I feel like Super Giant right now is it's like the wrong way of using her currently, I feel. But this is also because, like, I said all this, right? And I actually still think Super Giant is a good card because Super Giant is one of those cards that it's only really good when the world forgets about her. So, like, if you think about it this way, currently everyone is on this new card high, right? I call it a new card high because everyone wants to play a new card. So, because everybody wants to play the new card,
Hold
people
on, I
just
need
start.
to interrupt you. I'm sorry. You
What?
did the thing again. It's your favorite thing. Like everyone's on this new card high. A new card high is when everyone wants to play the new card.
Yeah, it's been a while since I did that, right? But yeah, I'm doing it again.
It's
It's
been
the
a while since
thing.
it's like, okay, I have a plan. This is the plan. I am explaining the plan. Like,
Yeah, it's kind of my thing right now without me realizing it. All right,
uh,
now I shall explain the plan of Super Giant, which is
okay, I have a
basically.
plan. It's called Hela on 6. The plan is we play Hela on 6.
Okay, yes, but the plan is with
Continue.
Super Giant, what you need to do is you really need to only use the card when people don't like know of her existence anymore. Because now currently no one's really playing like Sarah. At least for the first 48 hours, no one was really doing Sarah. No one was doing Jane stuff. No one was doing Leech. There was like so little, which is why Super Giant didn't really have her best targets. And like because people are actively like aware of the card, so she doesn't really get that much traction or whatever right now. Super Giant is better in like scenarios whereby she's long forgotten, everyone is back on their Sarahs, everyone is back on their leeches, and then someone just decides, yo, there's a tournament coming up. Isn't there so much Sarah in the game? Let me play my Super Giant right now. Like it's that kind of card. It's that kind of card. It's not a card whereby if she's very present and in everyone's like scope, right? She wouldn't be that great. But like if she's not like remembered, she's more impactful. I think she's that kind of card.
I worry that she's not the best answer to every one of those scenarios. That she needs a critical mass of stuff that she's hitting realistically, right? If you're just trying to beat Sarah, Mobius is going to do it better. If you are like, if you're trying to beat Sarah and Leech and Jane Foster, sure, you could talk me into Supergiant, but I just think that like more often than not, it's going to be one of those and not three of those that you're running this card for. And I think if it's one of those, I think you're usually going to have better options. What Supergiant actually does, like Jane Foster is a card that just like gets absolutely hammered by her, no pun
Yes.
intended. And like Sarah stuff, like Sarah decks can afford to not have the Sarah some of the time. Jane Foster decks cannot afford to not play the Jane Foster.
Mm-hmm.
MODOK gets really hammered by her. But those are not common things that you're going to have to be playing around. It's tough. And so I think right now that's why I'm lower on Supergiant than you. It's normally I can find another, even if people are playing a lot of Sarah, and they are. I am. Dara just hit where ground with it. Like people are playing a lot of Sarah, but Supergiant isn't the best solution to that. She needs to be significantly hitting other stuff in order to be worth including in your deck over something like Mobius, and that's hard. Thanos remains just a really good deck, and it is still just a really good deck, and it's going to keep being a really good deck. And this is what Thanos has done for such a period of time. And I think it's just impressive. Let's take a moment and give thanks to the inevitable one, Lord Thanos, that even in the Black Order season, where people are not playing any of the Black Order cards in the Thanos deck, he is still just here. I will say just huge shout out to Hela for taking my mind off of like Lockjaw Thanos and putting it firmly on Lockjaw Hela. Like I really appreciate that. It's really redirected my dislike of Lockjaw to a different deck. The card has only ever created the world's worst game states, but Thanos itself is just chugging along. It's a good deck. You can climb with it. It is quite solid. And I think that's a solid place for any deck to be.
Yeah, I don't have much to add, but I just want to like this topic was actually my idea, but because I also just want to say that like Thanos Lockjaw personally is like one of my pet decks, right? Like I can play it at any point in time, and the thing is now it's one of those few decks that like it's like fine into the Hela stuff because it's also a big deck, like big
It's
deck
big
stuff.
and it gets leech, yeah.
Yeah, it's also
Yep.
yes, exactly. It gets to do the leech thing with very little downside because you have like you can cheat stuff out with your own Lockjaw as well, right? It's effectively like a Like a Hela's like you offload everything on the final turn. This one is like gradually you build up big stuff over a couple of turns. So it's similar, but I guess more bearable. And yeah, okay, on that note, I just want to say that like Thanos Lockjaw is really just a very good deck to climb with right now. It's been that way for a while, and I think now it's not. Yeah, it doesn't change. It hasn't changed. Yeah.
I will say that I think it has some really awkward and bad matchups right now. Like when I play either side of the Thanos Lockjaw versus Annihilus bounce matchup, I just feel like it's wildly favored to the bounce deck. Like the stuff with the hood clogging you, it's hard to deal with unless you are very specifically high rolling with the Lockjaw a lot and also like getting stuff that moves. I've also felt that Sarah is pretty favored into Thanos Lockjaw right now. And I know it doesn't seem like it should be because, Kyera and stuff like that, but like that's a deck that just throws Enchantress on the Kyera, blows up your big stuff. It's interesting. Like Thanos Lockjaw, definitely I do feel like I'm good with it into Hela, but the rest of the matchups, they're definitely not as free as they were when Blob is broken. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, I just want to say one more thing, which is watch my previous video. That Sarah and Thanos matchup. It's all about the Magneto, guys. It's all about the Magneto. That's all I gotta say.
It is actually all about the Magneto because that Miss Marvel is really good against you. Like Miss Marvel's a
Yeah.
really good card against Thanos if you are not completely screwing it over with the Magneto.
Speaking of Miss Marvel, do you think our next topic is kind of similar, or is it not?
I think Omega Red is not even close to Miss Marvel because one of them's a 414, the other one's a 411, and 3 points matters.
The other one is 411, and you have to be ahead. It's actually a lot of difference, right? Like this one's a 414, which you can activate based on your own like board states, but the Omega Red is a 411 that you have to be winning on a particular lane very specifically. Like I've tried this card a little bit. I will be honest, I haven't tried it a lot, so maybe there is some hidden gem to this. But like from my little testing with this card, it just felt so much worse than Miss Marvel. Like you look at the card, it's like a walking Baxter building that works with Zabu. Oh, that's kind of cool. But like it's actually very restrictive in like when it's good. Like when I was winning with this card in like my little testing, I was like gonna win anyway, honestly, whether I had this like walking Baxter building effect or not. And like a lot of the time I was like, maybe if this was a tech card that costs 4, it's actually better. So I do applaud like Second Dinner's attempt to make this card more useful, because it is obviously more useful. It is
Yes.
a better version of itself, 100%. But if anyone's thinking like this is gonna be like the next Miss Marvel, nah, it's not. But like it is factually just straight up a better version of itself. So good job, SD.
I like it. I think it's a
I like it. I like
solid,
it.
reasonable card. I think generally speaking, what I find objectionable about it is that it leaves too much in control of your opponent. With Miss Marvel,
Yes.
your agency is all yours. With the exception of things like Debris or Annihilus, people are not putting stuff on your side of the board that's going to mess up your Miss Marvel. Hobgoblin, Green Goblin, Debris, Annihilus, Viper. It's like 5 cards. None of them are being overwhelmingly played. You can really deal with a lot of them, right? And outside of those cards, Miss Marvel is just going to let you determine whether or not she's on, let you determine where you want that power to go to be. And Omega Red is not going to do that because he is dictated to you by A, what lane you can reasonably be winning, and B, whether or not your opponent lets you win that lane. And so that is the major gap between them. It's not just a power gap, it's that Miss Marvel is more in your control than Omega Red is, even now. If anything, I would say that Omega Red needs to be like given an extra plus, like maybe he should be given +4, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe he should be a 4/5 that gives +4 if you're winning those locations. Maybe it should be Crown City instead of Baxter Building, because I think that he could very easily get that and still not be oppressive.
Essentially, what we are saying is he is Omega mid.
That brings me to a topic that I'm trying to get all my thoughts in order to make a video about, but it's like such a complex one that I'm going to have to script it out. So I just want to like float it here with you while I've got your chance to get input on it. I think that it is absolutely bonkers that they released a 3/5 with upside. Everyone called it power creep. This is Black Swan, by the way. And then they released a 4/11 that sucked. And like I can't get over this. Because it's like, it's so egregious to release a 3-5, right? But meanwhile, a 4-11, keep in mind, the vanilla stat line for 3 is 3-4, and the vanilla stat line for 4 is 4-6. And they made a 4-11, and it's not even good enough. Meanwhile, they made a 3-5, which nobody plays, and people call that power creep. And what I'm really trying to highlight here is 4s are so far removed from their baseline power in Marvel Snap. The average 4 that actually sees play is, conservatively speaking, like 2 of the thing. Like, being real about this, the average 4 that actually sees play is giving you like 12 points of power most of the time. Werewolf by Night, Dark Hawk, Sentry with an Annihilus in there, Miss Marvel just generally. Like, the cards people actually play in their decks, Shang-Chi, Enchantress, if these cards are seeing play, they are getting well above 4-6 kind of upside. They are getting 4-12 kind of upside. The best 3-drop right now is Gladiator, which is essentially at that same rate, and that's why Gladiator is good. Gladiator as a 3-8 is essentially 2 times the vanilla stat line for 3s. What I'm getting at here is that for some reason, and I don't know why, 4s have been allowed to run absolutely rampant. Every other stat line in the game is pretty close to their vanilla number. 1s are mostly in range of being a 1-2. 2s are mostly in range of being a 2-3. 3s are mostly in range of being a 3-4. 5s are mostly in range of being a 5-9. 6s actually are a little bit bigger, but they're allowed to be because they are the most expensive thing in the game. And here we have 4s, the massive outlier among these. Every playable 4 is like a 4-10 or above. The vanilla stat line is 4-6. When did this happen? Why did this happen? I don't know. But my proposal is, instead of talking about power creep at 3, they need to power leap. They need to give every 3-drop a point of power. End of story. Just give them all a point of power. It will be totally fine. With the exception of Gladiator, of course, who actually is already like balanced with this stuff in there. Like, pretty much every 3-drop can get a point of power and it'll be fine. I think they could even give a point of power to Brood and it wouldn't be broken. Like, that's where I'm at with it. I don't even think a 3-9 is that egregious. Straight up.
Yeah, actually, your analogy of like double the baseline stats of like 4 cost cards is quite interesting, because I didn't think of it that way, but when you mentioned it, I was like, oh yeah, this is really true, right? Like, even Enchantress, when it works, right? And when Enchantress works on a Tribunal deck, it's like a 400.
Yeah,
So,
it's like a 410 million. If you ever play Shang-Chi, it's a 413 at minimum, because that's why you play Shang-Chi. Like,
yeah,
what is
every
this?
4 cost card that is played is like this, which is kind of interesting, right?
Yes.
Like the counter argument people will make is like, oh, Jessica and all that, but Jessica is not played. That's the thing.
No one plays it. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. All the 4 cost cards that are played are like 2 times minimum power, which is insane, right? So of course, if we give every 3 cost card a point of power, then Gladiator will be the most useless 3 cost in the game. But like, I guess then we bump it up to 3-9 as well. Then
no. You keep Gladiator at 3-8. You give everything else a point of power, except, conservatively speaking,
and Gladiator becomes
Brood, Mystique,
normal.
Yeah, Gladiator becomes normal.
Oh, that's true, right? It's supposed to stay normal, right? Right. True. Yeah, and we mentioned I forgot, is it my episode or your episode, but that's the best part. You guys check it out on yourself. Watch both channels. But like, one of the episodes we said that because of Zabu introduced into the game as well, for these 4 cost cards with double their baseline value are also being played twice as much, because Zabu lets you play 2 of them on turn 6. So it's like twice the power and then twice the cost.
It's so much. Crazy, right? Like, when you think, like, it is, in my opinion, the biggest development hole they have dug themselves. Like, this is not necessarily the biggest problem in Marvel Snap, but the biggest hole. Because now it's like, how do you ever make a 4-drop that isn't perpetuating this? If you want people to buy it, how do you do that? And the answer is you can't.
Yeah. Like, you need a playable, you need to make a playable 4 cost card. But if it's playable, it means it's probably in line with what we have right now, right? All these playable cards, and like they never want to release a non-playable card. So yeah, it's a bit scarier. I think it's actually even scarier than the Galactus hole that we talked about multiple times before.
Yeah. Lambie specifically requested that I add this topic here. He says it's called -100 SP, and he wants to talk about a guy who is farming him. Go ahead.
Well, okay, it's not a person that's farming me specifically, but traditionally, Okay, so here's what's happening. If you guys know that there are two like decks that don't really see play outside of pool 1 and pool 2. For what it's worth, our eighth topic is usually something a bit more fun, which is but it's also very relevant, which is like decks that you don't understand, right? So one of it is like that decks that you don't see outside of pool 1 and 2 is like Zoo for the most part, a lot of the time. And the second one is classic move decks. By classic move decks, I mean like you got like cloaks, you got daggers, you got Hulkbusters with multiple men that don't explode. They just move. It's not Phoenix Force. Like they just move and stuff like that. And Ghost Spiders probably. So basically, what I wanted to say is that the deck that I've lost to the most on ladder is not Thanos. It's not Hela. It's not Sarah. It's a classic pull 2 move deck that just uses a Heimdall on turn 6 and it has so much power. Like, I'm not saying that like it's the best deck ever, but like this is the power of not understanding something, you know? Like because I got out of pool 2 so quickly and move decks in that meta, in that pool 2 slot never really became popular and good, right? So I never really got the time to understand and practice against classic move stuff, and I never really needed to because there was no meta that was relevant. But this is basically what I mean by like you need to understand your opponent to win against your opponent. Like if something pops up, if someone really plays like a classic move deck and you don't understand what's going on, you don't understand how to beat the deck, they will like scam you here and there and you don't even know you're getting scammed. AKA minus 100 SP across a few games versus the same person, because I kept playing against the same person and I was like, surely this is what the deck does. And then they do something that looks so basic, but you just don't realize it's doable. The power of knowledge is real, and then you lose all your cubes. So I feel like Marvel, this further reinforces the fact that like Marvel Snap is a card game, and knowledge is power. So when I tell you to study your matchups, really study your matchups, because that's the difference between 8 cubes and a retreat.
All right, y'all. I hope you enjoyed this episode of 8 Cubes. I just realized I should have made a joke where he was like, that's the difference between 8 cubes and a retreat. I should have segued from that into the outro here. I did it as clumsily as possible. You're welcome for that. Thank you so much for watching. For KMBest, I'm KMBest. That's Lambie Series. I pointed the right direction, and he will take us out.
Thank you so much for being here. You won't be seeing me on 8 cubes for about 2 weeks. I'll be away somewhere doing something. I'll be fine. Don't worry, guys. But yeah, but 8 cubes will still be running. KM will have guests.
Aren't you gonna be on the next one on my channel?
Well, yeah, I'll still be on that one.
Yeah, you're still gonna be on that one. This isn't goodbye yet.
Okay, yeah. So I will be away after the next episode of 8 cubes for a while. But I will be back. I'm fine.
Somewhere doing something.
Somewhere doing something, but I will be fine. So yes, thank you so much for being here with us today. If you like what you just saw, do like, comment, subscribe, and we will see you in the next one on KMBest channel. Bye-bye.